Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alan Joines, the mayor of the city of Winston-Salem, and I'm joined here with my colleagues from the city council, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Vivian H. Burke, Councilmember Dan Bessie, Councilmember Jeff McIntosh, Councilmember James Taylor, Councilmember Derwin Montgomery, Councilmember Denise Adams, Councilmember Robert Clark, and Councilmember Molly Light. We're also joined today by former alderman and state representative, our good friend Larry Womble. We'll talk more about Larry in just a moment. But we're here today to unveil a marker here in the historic City Hall that commemorates a courageous vote of the Board of Aldermen at that time, back in 1985, to set a formal holiday in recognition of Martin Luther King Jr. That was somewhat courageous. I think, as Councilmember Montgomery was saying earlier today, that even at that time there were still states across the United States that had not made this an official observance of Martin Luther King Day. So we're looking forward to unveiling the plaque and then hearing some comments from some of the aldermen that were here at that time. I'm going to now ask Mayor Pro Tem Burke for comments as well.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It is my pleasure to be here on this wonderful time. I was asked a question, how did the aldermen feel to make this a holiday? And I had to say, each person on the board felt positive. We did not have any disagreement. When Larry decided, Alderman Womble, that he was going to make a motion for this to be a holiday, I thought it was good, and I said, Larry, let's make sure we let one of the majorities second this motion. And sure enough, Alderman Robert Northerton seconded the motion. And I also had to say this, on this council, it may not have appeared to some, but I felt each person who was represented by people wanted us to have a peaceful city, wanted us to have a positive city. So when we decided to do this, the question was asked, how did the other elected officials feel? I have not heard any of them say anything unpleasant, because they understand the 235,000 people we all represent, and we want them to be safe. So when I spoke to the city manager about this, he thought it was great. He said, let me turn it over to Mr. McNeil. And of course, here we are today, Mayor and members of the council, and we're still happy. We're happy because, as it was stated, it was, what was that word, courageous?
Courageous, I think.
But see, Winston-Salem City, council people, aldermen, we're unique. We just felt it was the right thing, and we feel it's the right thing that we did. So we're honored today to have our former alderman and representative with us for this occasion.
Let's go ahead and unveil the marker so we can see what we're going to be talking about here. The plaque reads, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The Winston-Salem Board of Aldermen voted to recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a city holiday on December 16, 1985. Southeast Ward Alderman Larry W. Womble made the motion, seconded by West Ward Alderman Robert S. Northington. The motion was approved unanimously. Voting for the motion, Vivian H. Burke, Frank Fry, Patrick Harrison, Marilyn S. Harp, or Lynn Harp as we knew him, Virginia Newell, Robert S. Northington Jr., Larry W. Womble, and Martha S. Wood. The holiday was first observed in Winston-Salem on January 20, 1986, to coincide with the first observance of the federal King Day holiday. So let me ask now Representative Larry Womble for comments.
Out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. Ladies and gentlemen, that's part of a poem called Invictus. You might remember they made a play, a movie, out of that poem called Invictus about Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa. So everywhere I go, I cite part of that poem called Invictus. Let me say it's an honor and a pleasure for me to be here in the midst of so many distinguished people here in the city of Winston-Salem, those of you who traveled near and traveled far on this liquid sunshine night to be here. This is a very auspicious occasion because it doesn't happen every day. We want to thank the present city council members and also the former alderman at that time, that was the term used, for making this possible. We want to thank you for coming and being here in observance of that. Mayor Pro Tem Burke is correct. That night, I thought it would be fitting and proper and appropriate for us, the city of Winston-Salem, to do something like this for such a great leader in our nation and in this world, Dr. Martin Luther King. He transformed not only North Carolina, but he transformed the United States, he transformed this world. So if he could do that, what could we do right here in Winston-Salem to further recognize this man and his life and his legacy? We thank everybody for supporting my motion that night. It was unanimous, as Mayor Pro Tem Burke said. And that's very important for you to note. It was unanimous here in the city of Winston-Salem because there had been some turbulent times here in this city. I know that Greensboro gets most of the recognition with their Greensboro 4. But let me point out to you a fact that's very seldom known and mentioned. Winston-Salem was the first city, the very first city to peacefully integrate the lunch counters in this state. It wasn't Greensboro, it was Winston-Salem, to peacefully desegregate the lunch counters in this city. So that is something I think we need to be proud of. And not only that, but the person who started it off. It took four people in Greensboro, but it only took one person in Winston-Salem. One person started it. He does not get the recognition, but we should do something to recognize him. And that's Mr. Carl Matthews. Mr. Carl Matthews went down for several weeks by himself. Nobody would go down there with him to desegregate these lunch counters. Till finally, the students from Winston-Salem State and Wake Forest, living out the credo of Martin Luther King. I'm hoping that from this day forward, not only Winston-Salem, but the state and this nation and this world will live out that credo and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. I was fortunate enough to meet him and shake his hand and be in his presence several times and be at the March on Washington. I thank you all for coming to this occasion. Whether you realize it or not, it's very important. Mayor, thank you for all your help and all your work and your considerations. And these present day, not all of them, but city council members for what they have done. We want to thank Mr. Ed McNeil, very gracious person. Every time I talk to him, he's so gracious and polite and kind to me. Thank him. Lee Garrity, our city manager. He wasn't the city manager when I made that motion that night. Thank you too, and everybody else for being here. Let me say in closing too, that I didn't know if I could make it tonight, but I began to talk to some friends of mine and they said, you're gonna have to go. I wanted to come, but as you all see in my condition, I have to make a whole lot of preparation, dressed in transportation and drivers. And without these two people here tonight, I would not be here. And that's Tracy. Tracy is around here somewhere. Tracy Ingram and Sandra. Sandra's around here somewhere. Sandra Putin. Oh, here they are over here. They're the ones who make sure I get to place and look as well as I do, which is a hard job to do. And finally, I'm hoping that Winston-Salem will do something like what Greensboro did for theirs. The Greensboro 4, Franklin McCain just died last week. I'm hoping we do something for Carl Matthews before he dies. And it may not be the Greensboro 4 like they are, but it can be the Winston-Salem 1. I'm hoping that we'll do something. And if I was in a position, I'd make a motion, but I'm not in it. Thank you again. Thank you so very much, and I appreciate the honor and the pleasure of being here.
Larry, thank you, and we think you look pretty good. We're glad that you're here with us tonight, and we appreciate all that you have done for our community, not only as an alderman, but as a state representative. You've done so much for us and for the state of North Carolina. We had invited some other members of that council. Actually, John Palmer had indicated he might want to say a few words. Is John here by any chance? And then former council member and state representative Evelyn Terry said she might join us as well, but I don't see her as well. But so on behalf of the city council, I think everyone is all hearts and minds are good together. So thank everybody for being here. Enjoy the plaque there. We do have some light refreshments in the committee room if you'd like to stay and join us there. So thank you all for coming, and have a good evening.
Thank you.